and Merry Christmas to everyone joining us today on a very special episode of Gaming News Weekly with your hosts, as always, myself, I'm Rich, and my good friend and Christmas compadre, Tabs. Say hello, mate.
Ho, ho, ho! Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker! Because Die Hard is a Christmas film.
No. But yeah, so we do things a little bit differently today. This is a Christmas special. We thought, obviously we're a couple of days out from Christmas now. This will drop on Christmas Eve. We thought it might be nice to just do, I guess, ultimately a little refresh of the year. Things we thought were good, things we thought were not so good. Yes, rather than covering off some news that doesn't really exist. Did you have something to say, Tubbs? To add to that?
No, just a deep breath in preparation.
Okay. Cool. So we're just going to have a few head-ins and we're just going to go through some things that we thought were good and bad this year in video games. And I don't know about you, Tabs, but I've played very little games this week. So probably not for me to be discussing what games I've played this week. Have you been playing anything?
Just Skyrim, mate, so it's not even worth touching upon. I've banged on about that for the past 3 weeks, I think. So.
Anyway, right, if we're all set, let's dive into our first heading of the show, and it's best moment in gaming of the year. So this is our best, whatever it might be. It might be a reveal, it might be a game that we've played. Why don't you kick us off, Tabs? What was your best moment in gaming this year?
Yeah, I found this one difficult. I'm not good with moments. My memory's a bit tricksy with me. I'm not good at isolating that. I can remember kind of feelings and general, but moments are always hard to isolate. But the one that struck me first was when we were playing It Takes Two. And I don't know if you remember, mate. I think it was like the Winter Wonderland area. You basically come to this kind of, it's almost like a big play area.
Mm.
And I think it was where the tower that you had to climb up was.
Yeah, I remember it.
There was a track, and then we went round the track. You had to kind of propel yourself with whatever kind of what is it, like a quirk that you've got at that point in time, some sort of gameplay conceit. And anyway, you find this cave, and there's this room, isn't there, mate, which is basically like an imitation of Zelda.
It is, yeah.
A very popular Zelda room on Ocarina of Time, where there's a guard and there's rupees and there's pots around. And it was a nice crystallizing moment where there's a lot of great moments from that game generally. But I think it was just that at that point, with the fact that I really enjoyed that little space, that area that we were playing about in, and, you know, kind of competing against each other with little mini games, all exploring different bits and pieces. It was just a nice little standout moment that really stuck out for me. So that's where I went to, mate. But I should share this.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if this qualified in 2021 because I can't remember if it was a 2020 memory. But I was going to say, watching Rich mentally capitulate whilst playing Demon Souls. Basically, when we started the game, obviously I was a magic build, you were more melee focused, and we got to like the second level or second area, and it just got hard. And yeah, I'm only joking. Obviously, I don't like to see you struggle, but I thought that would be a funny one for the channel.
Definitely. But, I mean, I took this, I guess, less literally than down to a single moment. I've actually put playing It Takes Two with Tabs, the whole entirety of that. It was just one of the most unique, inspiring, uplifting moments I think I've ever had in terms of playing games. And I just think that game is so good. And, you know, obviously we've recently found out it won Game of the Year, when very much deserved that, even though it was a little unexpected. And I just think that the way in which the joy of playing that game, and especially sharing that with you, Tabs, as you know, as online play was fantastic, and I just loved that game. So yeah, my moment was similar to yours. Just I haven't picked out a singular moment. I've picked out the whole of the moment of playing that game with you. So yeah,
it is just. I mean, it doesn't nail everything. I didn't feel that game. Like the story had some weird moments, didn't it?
Definitely.
Are you all right?
Yeah, it's all right. I set an alarm for something yesterday.
Right. Like the story had some weird moments in it, and I'm not sure they kind of nailed every aspect. But saying that, it was an interesting narrative. It did kind of, and it overlaid, like you say, with all the other bits, the cooperative kind of gameplay and experience, the fun. The fun was one of the biggest things. You know, that kind of Nintendo sense of fun was just everywhere across the game. And just if you'd think, oh, there can't be much game left here, and there can't be many ideas to, you know, pull out. They just kept coming. Yeah, they just kept coming, and it's miraculous. It deserved game of the year all day long for me. So, spot on.
Absolutely. So we're on a similar line on that. Will we be on a similar line on this next one? So next up is Game Reveal of the Year. Now, I've gone for the God of War Ragnarok trailer. Now, I realise that wasn't necessarily a reveal because we already knew it was the game in the works. The reveal came, last year maybe? But obviously this was the first reveal of like what in-game will be, some look at some of the things that you might be doing in the game and some of the new mechanics. And I just thought I'm so excited for this game. It just looks spectacular. It was a game I was already hyping up. And the trailer with all the new elements and some of the ice areas that are now there and some of the different mechanics that seem to be there, certainly for traversal in the world and stuff. And the fact that the world is still very reminiscent of God of War that we've played and completed. I'm just really excited for this. So seeing this was absolutely my breakout moment of the reveal this year. So for me, game reveal of the year, definitely God of War Ragnarok. Be interesting to see what you've gone for, Tabs.
Yeah, I've gone different. To be honest, I didn't think of that. And now you said that, it's like, yeah, that's very valid as well. That would definitely be up there in my top 5 moments, I would say, our top 5 reveals. I went for, and another tenuous kind of reveal one is Elden Ring. Okay. Specifically, I'm talking about the gameplay kind of slice we saw. And obviously this kind of almost beta version that got sent out to, you know, many influencers and publications to try and test. And I was really excited about Elden Ring, obviously building on our foray into Demon Souls, really enjoying that. Our love generally, I would say, of open world adventure games.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, there was this hope, is this going to land on its feet? Is it going to really be what we want it to be? That kind of expectation, anticipation. And that gameplay video for me just kind of confirmed everything. You know, I don't think I've been as happy like seeing a reveal or a gameplay snippet since, like, you know, when they showed Forbidden West.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And I just thought they hit their nail on the head so well with that. And I've got that same sense of hope from Elden Ring that I just think it is going to be this Demon Souls open world experience that I think a lot of us want it to be. And again, the sense that the parallels we drew a lot with Zelda, mate, which we love, Breath of the Wild.
I think as well, not just that, what I took from the trailer as well is I think it'll be interesting to other people as well. People that maybe aren't like typical Souls, people who are into Souls games, because Souls games tend to be very difficult. But I think this new open world way in which they've done it, that you can move away from enemies and heal and stuff. I feel like they've sort of opening up the barrier to entry a lot wider, and I feel like that will help it to draw in more people, which is again very exciting as well, because hopefully it does really well from that. And you know, we don't really know a lot about the story, but I'm hoping, you know, with the people that have been involved in it, it's going to have a good story to boot. So yeah, very interested for that. So I think that's a worthy one on the reveal, mate.
Probably the start of a really beloved series, couldn't it? I really am that hopeful about what we've seen. So
absolutely, and we actually said a few days ago that it's a shame that it's not out, because we'd have loved to play it with a bit of downtime that we've got over Christmas. So that's praise indeed.
Would have been perfect. I did put a couple of runners up, mate, just for interest's sake. Okay. We won't spend long on them, but I had the Halo Infinite multiplayer Shadow drop. Okay. I thought that was a really cool way they were celebrating their anniversary, and even though it's not something I kind of lived or played through, I kind of saw the fanfare amongst the industry and pockets of fans, and it just seemed like a really nice moment. And then also Starfield. I watched So they've done some almost like documentary sort of trailers recently, I think, with those who are working on it, and showed little bits. But that, I'm playing Skyrim at the minute, and it's just, I think I'm forgetting how good a game that could be. And because I love sci-fi and open worlds again, it seems to be all about that. And I think if they can just marry that with what we've seen in Skyrim, sort of RPG experience, but obviously expanded on, that could be a really standout, amazing game that excites me a lot. So those are the runners-up.
Excellent. So next is multiplayer moment of the year. Now, I'll let you tell you what you've done in a moment, Tabs, but I haven't gone for because one of my favourite multiplayer moments of the year was It Takes Two, but I thought, in the interest of fairness, I would choose...
the same one. I'm positive we've got the same one.
I would choose something different to put. So, Tabs, what did you put? Tell me what you put.
Valheim.
I also put Valheim. It's interesting, isn't it? We've obviously both think the same thing. But yeah, I just a really good game. It's very much a time drain, which is ultimately why we stopped playing it, really, because, unfortunately, it's one of those games where, although it's a lot of fun to play, it's very grindy. You need to spend a lot of time doing it. But yeah, I just really enjoyed. I mean, it's such a great looking game in terms of what they've been able to achieve with the small team that they got. And yeah, just really, really enjoyed playing it. Frustrating at times, but I think all games should be frustrating at times. And I love the building elements of that game. I just think that's fantastic and a real showpiece of multiplayer game. We played it with one of our good friends, Andy. So yeah, real fun. What did you think, Tabs? Probably put the same thing.
That was the same thing for me. Because although It Takes Two immediately came to mind, it's a cooperative game. And it is a multiplayer, but Valheim seemed to embody a multiplayer experience more so because it was three of us for the most part. It was me, you, and Andy, and the trials and tribulations of working in this open world space. And like you say, the building elements was a massive thing. When we first built that house as the three together, and we'd come back, and Andy had kept iterating on bits and pieces, and you keep kind of pushing on the walls of that sandbox and learning new things, and opening up, mastering that universe, if you like. And of course, we had our own little foray at a point into building our own base that we went absolutely off the pier with in terms of the scale and detail we were looking for. And then obviously, some of the epic boss battles we had, I remember that big goo monster, which we actually ended up glitching our entire server with. So we couldn't revisit this one boss, BArcadians, because what would happen, mate? We'd die.
So it would, you'd basically die, and then you'd lose all your items, and then you couldn't be respawned or anything. Yeah, it was really strange, really strange.
But there's such lows in that as well. I mean, I think it's fair to say we argued a little bit between the three of us at times, because you've all got different ideas, different time and energy to put into the game. We also had some low moments, like when you're pushing on the boundaries of the universe and then something kills you out of nowhere, Desquito.
Yes.
And then you've got to hike back naked. Yeah. And this is where you really have to lean on your friends to get your gear back, which is it's a painstaking experience at times. But then I still remember moments like hearing Andy go, "Goblin, goblin!"
Yeah.
And just running away from enemies. Yeah. It was a very unique experience, and
absolutely. And one I urge people to, if they haven't played, to go and play, because it's relatively cost effective. It's not loads of it. It's not a really expensive game to play, and it's so much fun to play. So if you've not played it, I urge you to go out and play, because it is a lot of fun to play. Right,
we should maybe. We should move on, but we should maybe have a go ourselves, mate. And because there's been an update, hasn't there? I need to look into that. But
and I believe there's another one coming. The Mistlands is not far away. I don't know if you remember, we visited the Mistlands because they're in the game, but they're not populated with enemies and resources and stuff. Well, I believe that's coming very shortly.
Maybe we'll wait for that then.
Definitely. I have to say, a close second for me on that would be, we played a bit of Ghost of Tsushima. There's a new part of that out. The online multiplayer, and I really did enjoy playing that. Again, played with you, Tabs, and I think played with Rob and Ryan. That was real good fun as well. So that was close second for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right, so moving on. Best looking new tech of the year. What do you got for this, Tabs? I wonder whether we've put the same thing for this as well, to be fair. We're nothing if not consistent.
Well, based on your previous comments, I think we will have the same thing.
Okay.
However, based on your previous comments, I should give you some banter about it. But basically, Unreal Engine 5. Have we both got that?
Oh, okay. We don't have the same thing. That's very interesting.
Right. Well, I went for Unreal Engine 5. Obviously, software kind of qualifies as technology. Nanite, this kind of infinite detail, geometry technology just seems amazing for the industry. You can scan in like movie grade assets and it just works. Lumen, this, it's kind of system level global illumination system, which seems to kind of rival, at least aesthetically, what ray tracing can deliver. Perhaps not quite as good, but again, the fact that it's in this engine, which essentially is brought to the masses of games development, it opens up so much potential for the future. And obviously, the biggest benefit, or one of the biggest benefits of Unreal Engine, is that smaller developers can get their hands on this tech and deliver experiences which, to an extent feel AAA. And they don't have to put all that time and investment into building, their own proprietary engines, if that's the right way to put it. And then obviously that was all crystallized at the end of the year with this Matrix demo, which is where I was going to give you some banter, mate. But that just, I think, it looks stunning. And whilst I agree with Rich, gameplay wise, it's quite rudimentary. The prospects and the scope in the industry there, because essentially I think what that biggest thing it does for me is it's open worlds for all, because they create this open world landscape, which in many ways, to illustrate how advanced it is, is much better than, say, Cyberpunk 2077's open world mechanics. And I presume they've more or less sneezed this one out, at least when you compare the development time between Cyberpunk 2077 and this kind of tech demo they've created. And it just feels like, again, that's going to be such it's lowered the barrier for entry for open world experiences. Again, when we're looking at indie developers, smaller developers that are going to be able to utilize this technology and push the industry onwards, because that's been a big thing, isn't it? Open world games, mate, like GTA, like Red Dead Redemption, these real, really supreme experiences of open world, which they're quite few and far between on that level, at that caliber. And obviously the likes of Rockstar, they take their sweet time with it, which is a gamer is sometimes a little bit frustrating, as we've moaned about all the year long. But opening that technology up essentially will hopefully create more competition in that space and give, smaller developers the chance to actually bring those experiences to us as well. And that just gives us as gamers a much better supply, hopefully, of the games we love to play. So I'll stop talking now. That was me. I'm interested to hear what you've got though, mate, if it's not that.
I have to say, that is an incredible piece of technology, and I do think that is going to break the games industry in a certain way. The way in which it's available to all, and the technology is so advanced, it feels like it's really on the cutting edge of where it really does feel like that's how games are going to be made in the next 10 years. That's how fundamentally exciting that technology is. But my best new tech of the year sort of feels, I think, like a place in the market that doesn't really exist. And I went for the Pocket Analog.
Nice. I can get behind that.
I having looked into this more, we mentioned it a few times on the news. It's sort of in a place in the market that's never really existed. There's never been, certainly now with all these older handheld consoles that are now sort of defunct a little bit, it's sort of brought an element of bringing those back to people again. You can buy this one device with various little add-ons and stuff that allows you to play all of those games that you used to love on a nice screen with rechargeable batteries. And it's sort of it's created this unique, retro handheld world that didn't exist before. certainly to my mind anyway. And I just think that technology and what they've done, and it looks like a lovely piece of tech. I just think that was a real surprise this year. And the fact that it seems like it's relatively reasonably priced at sort of like $220 or whatever it is. I realise it's expensive, but I think what you're getting for that money, I think is really, really decent. I think that was one of the real highlights in terms of new tech this year, and it wasn't one I was really expecting. But I do think it's going to be a real seller and a real hit with people that used to play handheld games like Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm really excited for that piece of tech.
It's nice to see, isn't it, alongside stuff like the Steam Deck, when these companies really invest and put premium hardware out there, because it is in many ways some of the components of the analog pocket seem. You'd say, the screen, for example, is almost overkill.
Yeah.
In how good it is, but that investment always, or nearly always, pays off if you can get the unit as a whole right. And I think it looks like they're going to do well out of it. And I just hope that ecosystem continues to grow because, I'm not sure if it will be a platform in its own right, but I don't know. I know they've got some. You can create music on it. I've seen something to do with that.
That's cool.
And I just wonder if. Will it revitalize some sort of kind of cottage industry where, developers create games on it? Or, I think you'd have to start cracking stuff because they're older platforms. I'm not sure. But perhaps there's something there that it can just keep growing and, and revitalizing that retro scene as well, which is always a lovely trip down memory lane.
Absolutely. So, next topic is worst new IP of the year. Now, it's a tricky one, this, because some of the ones that came to mind for me when I looked up at them, it was like, it's late 2020 or it was out mid-2020, even though I felt like we've talked about it quite a bit this year. But the thing I'm going to go for is eFootball 2022.
I had that, but I've got a backup, so that's fine.
Okay, I just, on the face of it, I was really excited for this. Me and Tabs have been speaking at length about how, we hoped that we were going to see another PES, another Pro Evolution Soccer, and it was going to revolutionise, footballing, and we were going to be really excited by it and want to play it again. Especially given the fact that, we were told that they were going to leave it in the oven for an additional year and try and bring something unique. And what they've ended up bringing, certainly this was dropped as almost like a tech demo almost. It's hard to know how it was sort of a pre-release of what the game was going to be. And it was, to be honest, it looked rough. It didn't play very well. It had lots of glitches. And then obviously they announced that it was going to be, what did they announce? It was going to be like a pay-to-play sort of scenario, Tabs, moving forwards.
Well, it was a free-to-play, bare bones package. And then I think they were going to add on other areas of the experience which you could pay for. That's how I remember it. Again, I could be wrong. But yeah, I think you're pointing out, basically what you're saying is, mate, they've jumped off into the deep end, into some completely different business model than what PES was all about. And carry on. Yeah, and
obviously it was completely taken for left field. I downloaded it, I played it, didn't think a lot to it. It didn't have those hallmarks that I expect from PES and that feel that you get from PES, which is what me and Tabs love about PES. So yeah, that was my worst IP in that. And to be fair, the backlash from that is what created now that's it. We're not going to see any proper PESs anymore. So that's like a worst new IP and I guess biggest disappointment of the year for me. What about you, Tabs? I guess you seconded that for that. Did you have a backup, you say?
Yeah, I suppose it's another sort of similar story of, company, beloved IP, basically does a bit of a Lemmings moment and jumps off a cliff with the IP and into oblivion because, this might not qualify technically. GTA, the trilogy, the definitive edition. I know it's a new IP. Obviously, it's not a new IP. It's an existing IP. But because it's a reimagining and it's been packaged as it has in this trilogy, I thought I could just about scrape it in the boundaries.
Okay, fair enough. I actually had that and then thought, this doesn't really qualify, but carry on.
Yeah, I just feel like it was such a missed opportunity. We've banged on about it a lot in news this year, and from such a big company that takes their time, that has so much money, that seemingly is they don't rush into anything, and they care about their reputation. For them to do this just seemed like an utterly, stupid, it has to be said, moment of leadership and business decision. It still baffles me. I'd love to see the documentary of how that game got approved and released. The gold button was pressed or whatever. I think that would be fascinating to see the failure among the organisation of how that came to be. We'll probably never see that, but I don't think there's much more to be said about it, mate. Everybody, there's so much press about it, would just be going over it again needlessly. But appreciate it's a bit of a technicality, but I think
I like it.
I did have eFootball 2022 as the first position because that just fits the bill perfectly.
It's interesting because we didn't tell each other what we'd got for any of these, so they're obviously all a surprise to each other. It's interesting that we obviously have similar opinions on it, but that's very interesting. But next up is Unsung Hero. This is the game that maybe didn't review particularly well, or people didn't like particularly much, but enjoyable to play nonetheless. Now, I tried on my pick to choose something that I'd actually played, because I thought it was unfair to call something an unsung hero and then not to have played it. Obviously, Tabs, if you've done that, that's fine. That's not a problem. But my unsung...
I have done that. So.
My unsung hero this year is Oddworld Soulstorm. Now, I downloaded this. It didn't get great reviews, but I really enjoyed playing it. I've enjoyed the original games. I think they're out on the PS1 or 2. I really enjoyed playing the originals. I like the puzzling element of it, given the type of game that it is. And also it just was very reminiscent of like the old games and brought back lots of good memories of sort of my very early memories of gaming. And I just really enjoy playing it. I mean, I think it sits at I've got it on PS5 and I think it sits at 66 on Metacritic. So it's not been reviewed well at all, but I really enjoyed playing it, really enjoyed working out the puzzles and how you get around stuff and without killing all of your men and that. So yeah, really enjoyed playing that. So that's my unsung hero this year. Tabs, what's your unsung hero this year that you've played lots?
Well, I've got a good excuse because we've talked a bit about it on the channel, but I'm renovating a house at the minute, and I have been for the last good few months, which has narrowed my ability to really play much at all. Game wise, I've got a heck of a backlog, so I decided I'd reach outside of that, give us a bit more coverage of the games industry at large. And basically, I've been listening to quite a few kind of end of year review sort of podcasts, videos, whatever, and this one's come up a few times, and it made me look into it, and I thought this sounds really interesting, but I've just before I'd heard it on a couple of these videos, I knew nothing about it at all. So anyway, I've got a review that I pulled from Metacritic. I'm going to lean into the camera, mates, apologies viewers, but this is what was said. Gaming Nexus, they gave it 100 on Metacritic. They said go into Inscription is the game, as unspoiled as possible, and trust in the game. You'll find a deeply enjoyable card game wrapped in a series of dark mysteries, wrapped in, well, other stuff. Part CCG game, part escape room puzzle game, and part bonkers gonzo whirlybird lunacy. Inscription is one of the best games of the year. So, yeah, basically, I'd heard... I'm sure there's actually other outlets that have actually nominated this their Game of the Year 2021.
Wow. I mean, I've never heard of it.
No. Apparently it's like a card game, mate. But then there's some sort of narrative around that to do almost like a horror sort of scenario. So, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm going to check straight after filming what the price is at the minute. And if it's reasonable, I might actually have a punt on that.
What platform are we talking?
I think it's Steam. I think it's PC.
Oh, it's a PC.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other console releases yet, but it looks like it's been successful and there's enough hype. Maybe it will get ported at some point.
Oh, awesome.
But yeah, I just thought that the more I'd looked into that, it sounded so interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'll be absolutely honest with you. The only other thing I had, again, as sort of a backup, was Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, no real life experience with it. But I poo-pooed it when I first saw the trailer.
Agreed.
I was worried it was going to be, Avengers, Mark II. And, it seems to have been, the exact opposite to that. It was Game of the Year contender. It received a lot of nominations. I think it won an award for something. I forget. Is it Best Narrative or Direction? And that's that. I think I'm almost at the point now. I think that's kind of on a backlog for me, mate. If I can find that for cheap in 6 months' time, I'd like to give that a go because it sounds great.
Excellent. Well, there we go. So last up, and this is sort of an open-ended sort of title. I've put gripes and moans. So anything that we were not happy with,
just to end on a high,
Rich? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we'll try and keep this snappy. We won't go into too much detail, but obviously there was a lot of, sort of disappointing things that happened in the games industry. Some really shocking things that came to light in the games industry this year, which we just thought we'd better cover off. I'm going to start with my personal gripe that I didn't see an MGS at all this year. That really upset me. I honestly thought we would see an MGS remake this year. I thought we would see an announcement of it, or maybe it'd even launch for Christmas. Obviously, that's come and gone. Maybe it's not even in the works, but I'm really craving an MGS at the minute. Metal Gear Solid, if you're not sure of the abbreviation. So, yeah, I'm disappointed in that, and I guess that's one of the things I'm disappointed with. There's so many other things to talk about, gripes in the industry. Obviously, we've had the Blizzard Activision, shocking revelations that have come out with that. And that's obviously, we spoke at length a few times in the last few weeks about that and the terrible things that have been going on there. And hopefully the authorities, whether it's, seeing people move on or, it looks like the actual, people, MPs and stuff over in America are going to have to get involved with this, or senators they are in America, to deal with that.
I put that to toxic cultures like, Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard. I've even seen stuff about Bungie recently. I mean, I think it's just rife. Obviously, it's much more extreme in the likes of Activision and Ubisoft in terms of specifically sexual harassment and, some terrible examples of business practices, but it's a bummer. I suppose it's a good thing that it's all coming to light and it's being addressed seemingly, or at least other parts of the industry are putting pressure to try and get it addressed. I mean, it's an ongoing thing, but it sucks to see. We don't want to live in a world like that. We don't want other people to experience those things.
I think ultimately it's a shame that an industry that we hold in such high regard as the games industry, that it should be that behind the scenes there's all of these things going on that are completely over the line of where we think, a beautiful industry that we think is the games developing industry should be. And it's really, to be honest, it's really shocking that, and it sort of, it taints your thoughts on the industry a little bit with all these revelations that have been coming out in weeks to multiple companies, as Tabs has said. And it's a real shame, and we really hope that there's a push for positive change moving forward, whether that's the removal of CEOs, putting the right people in place, or holding people accountable for their actions more so than have been in the past. So hopefully we can have positive change from such a negative things to come out from that. Anything else you wanted to talk about, Tabs, that's going on at the moment in the industry that we're not best chuffed about, or anything you think has missed this year that was a real shame?
Well, we've touched upon it in the worst IP, so unfinished games, GTA Trilogy, the Definitive Edition, and what else did I think of? I'd made some notes. Battlefield 2042, eFootball, of course, as you've mentioned as well. So it's hard to say if that's mostly a COVID thing, because we know the damage it's had on, across our economy, society, supply lines, whatever you want to blame. And hopefully it's isolated to that, and that developers just had to push something out, for share prices, whatever. But obviously, we saw the trend begin, if you like. Well, we've seen it for many years now, but Cyberpunk was when we really, I suppose, noticed it amongst AAA level developers. Or at least it feels like that in recent memory. And then it almost feels like its own sort of, what's the word, pandemic amongst the games industry, that, it's a standard that's been set now. It's okay to do it, and you can still be successful and sell loads of copies of a game. And it's still a viable way to run a business. And I really worry that will continue to be a thing. And I just think it's terrible. I think it really does, it sets the whole industry back in terms of the standards we should be aiming for. And it just ruins experiences as a gamer, not just previous franchises that are beloved and hold so much. They're capsules of memories for gamers, but also when it comes to new IPs like Cyberpunk and the sort of hype train that leads up to it, and then that massive disappointment because they failed to deliver. And then great, maybe it gets close to what it was supposed to be a year from then, but at that point, how many gamers have tried to enjoy it and love it and have forever missed out on that what the experience should have been. So it's just it just sucks generally, that. And then what else did I put? NFTs. Quick word on NFTs. I mean, we covered that off in last week's news if you want to revisit BArcadians, but that again does not spell good things, I don't think, for the games industry. I won't open that can of worms here though, mate. And then toxic gamers I've put.
Oh dear. Wow.
So just generally, I think, we saw a real extreme version of that when The Last of Us Part 2 came out. And that sort of, sending death threat to the companies because they're not happy with a direction decision or, a narrative. We see it all the time in all walks of life, really, mostly fueled by social media these days. But it's never nice to see because I feel it just generally leads to division, not least amongst communities and gamers as a whole, but then across the industry as well. I think, it pisses developers off. It kind of leads to us and them tribes forming everywhere, when we're all just part of the same fabric and we all share the same hobby and the same passion and enthusiasm. It's just such a sad sight to see. So I think that about covers it for me, mate. I know we wanted to keep it relatively snappy, so I'll shut up there.
Excellent. So I think I would say in general it's been a good year for the games industry. There's been some real standout moments. I'd say a lot of games have missed this year that probably would have pre-pandemic have hit this year, which ultimately is disappointing. But I think what it's setting up for us next year is one hell of a year in gaming. I think we're going to see title after title after title. And on that, next week on the news, we are going to be doing a little New Year's special where we're going to be talking about everything we're excited for, games, technology, whatever it might be. So make sure you tune in for that next week. On behalf of me and Tabs and everyone at Binary Arcadia, which is me and Tabs, we'd like to wish you a very, very Merry Christmas, and we thank you for joining us week in, week out on Binary Arcadia. If you have, as always, if you're new here, we really appreciate the support, and if you'd like to give us a like and subscribe to the channel, we would love to have you on board for the ride. But I think that's enough for this show, and we will see you on the New Year's show next week. Another one for the archive.
Stamped and completed.